The main difference between the XR100 and the CRF110 is the manual clutch versus semi-automatic, the wheel size, the seat height, as well as fuel injection on the newer models. But if you want to learn all of the practical differences and what they actually mean when riding one and owning one, I'm going to break them down here. Starting with the engine, the XR100 has a 5-speed manual clutch transmission. So if you've never ridden a manual clutch, this is a perfect bike to start it out on because it has very smooth, very predictable, and controllable power. So that means you got to learn how to slip the clutch when getting going and shifting gears, whereas the CRF110, it has a 4-speed semi-automatic transmission. That means you still shift gears, but there is no clutch. You just shift it into gear and you hit the gas, let off, shift it, and get on the gas again. As far as the power goes, they're actually pretty similar, even though this has 10cc more. In fact, the 100 might actually have a little bit more peak horsepower, but the power to weight ratio, they're pretty close to the same. The XR100, no matter what year you get, it has kickstart only, whereas the CRF110, any year you get, it has electric start as well as a backup kickstarter in case the battery goes dead. Now the fueling system, again, the XR100 has always had the carburetor. It's nice and simple, and when tuned properly, it's pretty easy to start. The major thing is that when you use bad gas or it's been sitting for months or years, they tend to gum up this small pilot jets, cause them to not start, not idle, not run very well. So you have to take them apart and clean them or replace a jet. However, the CRF110, it had the carb in 2013 all the way up to 2018, and then in 2019 and newer, it has EFI, electronic fuel injection, which honestly, I prefer because it is less of a hassle. You can let it sit for a lot longer and it's still going to start really easily, have nice crisp throttle response, but some people like the older, simpler carbs, even though almost every bike I buy has carb problems. Moving on to the size and handling, there's quite a bit of difference because the XR100 has a 30.5-inch seat height, whereas the CRF110 has a 25.9-inch seat height, almost 5 inches taller. So if you want a lower seat height, one that's going to be easier to touch the ground on, this is definitely going to be your better choice. Now, you might think that the 110 is going to be a lot lighter, but it's really not. It's about 169 pounds wet weight, ready to ride, where the XR100 is 174 pounds, I believe. So it's like 4 or 5 pound difference when you're riding it. The 110 feels lighter because of the lower center of gravity, although when you go to pick it up, they're pretty close to the same feeling. The 100 is going to feel a little bit heavier. Now, the wheelbase, the XR100 has a 49.4-inch wheelbase, where this 110 has a 41.9-inch wheelbase. What does that actually mean? Well, the almost 8-inch longer wheelbase is going to be a lot more stable for a bigger rider, or if you're riding on trails with bumpy terrain, rocks, roots, it's going to feel a lot more stable, so it's not going to bounce back and forth as much. It's not going to wheelie or loop out as easily as the 110, but the shorter wheelbase is going to be a lot easier to turn. It's going to feel lighter and quicker handling. It's like comparing a short car versus a bigger SUV or a truck. The steering is going to feel heavier, where this is going to feel a little bit quicker and easier. The XR100 has a 19 and 16-inch wheels, where the 110 has a 14 and 12-inch wheels. That's a pretty big difference, and what that means for actually riding, the bigger wheels, they roll over obstacles better. They're more stable, and you're not going to deflect off them as easily. On flat ground, the smaller wheels are fine, but if you're riding over roots and logs and bumpy terrain and rocks, this is going to feel a little less stable, and it's going to bounce around a little bit more. And you're more likely to get hung up as well because of the lower ground clearance under the engine and frame. And the suspension travel on the 100 is 4.7 to 5 inches front and rear, whereas the 110, it has 4.3 to 4.8 inches of suspension travel. Neither of them are adjustable other than the shock preload, so nice and simple and reliable. They're nice and plush, which is really good for just starting out, learning to ride, or at low trail riding speeds like under 15 miles an hour, because that soft suspension is going to soak up those bumps. But once you start riding above 15 miles an hour, or if you're a heavier rider, that softer suspension is going to limit your riding. You're going to start getting bucked around unless you stiffen it up or upgrade. The longer travel suspension is going to feel like it has a little bit more performance because it can soak up a little bit more before bottoming out. So the 110 might feel a little bit more harsh if you're using all the suspension travel. Is there an actual weight limit to these bikes? I don't know if Honda actually gives one, but I'd say the XR100 is good for if you're up to 150-ish pounds, although there's guys that ride this that are over 200 pounds and do just fine, but you're going to bottom out the suspension really easily. Where the 110, you probably want to be under 120 pounds, otherwise you're going to bottom the suspension out pretty quickly. What does it mean to bottom out the suspension? Well, when the forks and shock fully compress, you're going to hear and feel a big clunk. That's going to be really uncomfortable. It can cause you to crash, and it can end up damaging the parts. You can, if you're doing jumps on these bikes, which they're not meant for, you're going to end up breaking them unless you do some serious reinforcing, which I do have some articles to the best mods for both of these bikes in the description below. As far as maintenance and reliability goes, these are about as reliable as you can get for a dirt bike. Keep the oil clean and up to the maximum line. Keep the air filter clean. Keep the chain properly tensioned, and these things are going to last thousands of hours or decades. The biggest problem is actually because they're so reliable, because when you go and look at a used one, sometimes and oftentimes on the older bikes, they're neglected, they're not maintained properly, the owners don't change oil often enough, so they end up smoking, making noise, ticking. They're harder to start, and if you're unsure what size bike you should get based on your height or your weight, I have a free size chart. You can download that through the link in the description below. Now, how much can you expect to spend on one of these? Well, it mainly depends on your local market and the supply and demand for them. But for like the 85 to all the way to 2003 XR100, they didn't change a whole lot. You can expect to spend $800 to $1,800 depending on the year and the condition of it. Whereas the CRF110, you can expect to spend anywhere from $1,300 to $2,500-ish. The 2019 and newer with the fuel injection, you're going to spend a few $100 more for than the older carb model. So you should pick the XR100 if you're around 4'10" or taller, and if you want a more stable bike, one that's not going to bounce around as much or deflect or wheelie as easily, you should get the XR100 if you want a little bit more suspension travel to soak up those bumps a little bit more. Maybe you're riding trails a little higher speed, or you're a little bit heavier rider. The 100 is a good choice if you don't mind having a kickstart only, you don't need electric start, and you don't mind having a carburetor. It's also a better choice if you want something on more of a budget, because these tend to be cheaper to find used. Now, you should choose the CRF110 if you are a smaller rider. If you're under 5 feet, you want something that's lower to the ground, you should choose it. If you want something shorter, smaller, easier to turn, easier to handle, easier to pick up if you tip over. If you want electric start, this is definitely the way to go. And if you want fuel injection, then you need to go with the 2019 and newer. But if you want electric and kickstart, but you still want the carburetor, you don't want to deal with fuel injection yet, the 2013 to 2018 CRF110 is your choice. And if you want to know what the 4 biggest mistakes are that people make when getting into dirt biking that break the bank, you should check out this video. I want to show you how to do it for under $2,000 while still being safe with proper riding gear and having a low maintenance dirt bike. I'm Kelly Fagan from MX Hideout. Ride safe, have fun.